Okay. All right. So this video is designed to help you do the homework readings. And also you can apply this to the videos. And it's not mandatory, but reading and taking notes out of class is. So this is entitled, How Do I Learn from a Textbook? So our learning goal is to give you a method to read and to learn from and take notes from this textbook without giving you 52 pages of fill in the blank organizers and things like that. My goal is not only to help you learn it better, but also make it easier. So, the main idea that I want you to understand is that in AP World History, you you're responsible for learning the basics of history outside of class so that when you come in, number one, I could help you with what you don't understand, and we can use class time for activities and skills. If I were to teach you what the book said, it would take up all our class time. So I want you to understand that the flip side of doing the activities such as looking at scrolls, art analysis, trade games, role play, court cases, debates, and things like that is that we have to learn the information outside of class. So, why do we read and why do we take notes? Well, number one, we obviously read and take notes to remember the specifics about history. Now, I will tell you, your book is pretty basic. For example, this would be a history book that some other classes use for this class. So you're looking at like 32 pages a chapter. This textbook, okay, ranges between 6 and 12 pages for chapter. I mean, let's be honest here. Okay, which one would you rather read? But the bottom line is you have to take notes because taking notes helps you remember. Number two, we read to understand. Okay. The first thing I'm going to tell you is this: never copy anything word for word from the textbook. Okay. Rather, read it, think about it, put it in your own words, and then write it down. And you don't have to write in full sentences, not unless that helps you. See, what happens is when we take information in, we have to integrate it with the existing knowledge. And so therefore, when we begin to work with it, it fits in better. Whereas when we copy something word for word, we're more focused on the accuracy and not what the message is. And then finally, we write to see the big picture. Every one of these chapters focuses on a specific event, development, or a group. Well, they fit into the overall processes and the things we're looking at that unit. So as I read about Song China, I'm thinking about, okay, how did this fit into the ways that governments between 1200 and 1450 unified, ruled, and provided for their populations? So basically, when we look at the process, the very first thing is I will post an assignment like I did for this one, which I say, okay, you're reading these pages. This is the question that you're trying to answer. And this is the identifications that you need to include. So you need to read that first because you need to know what to look for. This should help you weed out information that really doesn't apply to answering the question. Secondly, we read by section. Okay, so this is the textbook right here. So you'll notice that it's divided into sections. So the first thing that I do is I read a section. And what I do is I read it by the smaller sections. Okay, you might want to use the bigger sections. That's up to you. But I'm reading through it and I read through it once, the whole thing. And then when I'm done, I say, okay, what did that tell me to answer the essential question? So then I get my pen and I begin to write notes. I repeat that for stage two, for all the sections. And one thing that I also do is when I get about in the middle, I stop and I go back and I physically say, okay, this section says this section says this. So it's kind of a step-by-step process. The reason is is that when you're trying to write down as you read the first time, all you're focusing is on the sentence, not the big picture. And then lastly, we always want to apply what we read. So we go back to the essential question, or we do the summary assignment. And we think about, okay, after reading this, how did this help me answer the essential question? So this is your first assignment. Okay. So I've got my textbook here. Okay. My phone's over there. I don't have it near me because it's a distraction. I don't care if you play music. I have to play music or television in the background because I hate silence. So I've got my notebook. One thing I want you to realize is this. If I have you read it and take notes, I do the same thing. So what I use is I use these scientific notebooks, and I use what's called the Cornell method. I'm going to show you that a little bit later. Okay. But I have the section titles or the essential question, and then this is where I take my notes. Okay. So I want to make sure when I read this that I understand how the Song Dynasty of China unified, brought people together, usually through religion. What was their government like? How did they rule? And how did they provide agriculture and trade to get wealth for their people? Those are the three things I'm looking for. Okay, so I've got this. I begin to read. I write down notes. You are more than welcome to come up and take a look at my notes so that I prove that I actually do it. Okay, so I go through it. And then at the very end, as I go through, I need to build in these vocabularies. Now, when I do vocabulary lists, they're not in order. They're in alphabetical order. So I need to, define what a bureaucracy is. Well, bureaucracy is government workers, so that goes under rules. In champa rice, well, that's food, so that goes under providing, and so forth and so on. So you're only going to read to page 9, and you're going to stop where it says Japan, because I'm going to take care of that in class. Okay? So I go through it, and I go back and I read the essential question. Now, key ideas to remember. 1, you are responsible for outside learning in this class. I explained that before. 2, handwritten notes are required. Okay? And I'll explain that a little bit more. Now, when you come to class, there's going to be some sort of assessment, some sort of quiz, because I need to know what you picked up, and things like that. So I don't jump the gun and, give you an assignment that you can't do. Now, these assessments right now, you can use these notes on. Okay? If you need help or further guidance, Dane time's the best time. Okay? Happy reading. This should take you an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes.